Welcome. I am Daisy, your hostess. Are you one of those people who quietly despair with the feeling that you're not as good as other people? You're not alone. You'd be surprised how many people of different age groups, despite their achievements, despite their good looks, despite their own wealths, etc., live with such despair. This book is like that proverbial message in a bottle. It has come from the past with a timeless message and some tips on how to overcome lack of confidence, lack of creativity, and other self-deprecating behaviors. We're now heading into part 2 of this book read, so if you found me at this video, make sure to visit my playlist to grab the first part and subscribe to the channel to be notified of the next chapters. As I was reading through the chapters, I couldn't help think about how often, if we are lucky, our parents tried to share pearls of wisdom that at the time perhaps felt like we were getting a scolding or we were being reprimanded. And it's interesting, as for myself, now crossing over the other side and now being a parent myself, how those so-called scoldings were valuable tenets important in building those early foundations. And I don't know if it's just me, and I'm not going to sit here and just say, oh, well, I'm Generation X, Generation Z. It's just alphabet soup is not for me. But I could tell you, since I had an opportunity to see it in my younger days, and it's such a shame in the United States that I've seen a degrading of the beautiful way that we were as humans, where we actually took the time to show manners, to be polite, to care, not to be in this rushing microwave world. And I do hope that we can come back to that, where we can be genuinely caring for others. And sometimes that caring doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give to the poor. No, sometimes that caring is to look at someone in the eye and acknowledge that they exist. And I do believe the author does mention it a couple times, that it is in giving of ourselves to others that we can actually learn more about our own selves, right? I don't think that the author said it that way, but in my reflection, that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I can only hope that in this book you can find one thing that can help you on your journey. And if you are interested in that self-development, I hope that it may serve you so well that you can share it with others. I now turn the page. Part 2. How you're better than you think. 5. You're healthier than you think. Recently, a doctor kiddingly told an audience of physicians that whenever their services are needed, they ought to rush to give help before nature herself cures the patient. Of course, he was joking, yet every doctor in the audience knew that there was a great deal of truth in this jest. In a book that is a classic on the subject, The Wisdom of the Body by Dr. Walter Buchanan tells us that the fathers of medicine made use of the expression, the healing force of nature. This expression, he wrote, referred to the fact that processes of repair after injury and of restoration to health after disease go on quite independent of any treatment which a physician may give. Why we still need physicians. Dr. Cannon didn't maintain, of course, that the services of physicians are unnecessary. It is precisely because the doctor knows that nature is on his side that he can bring cheer and hope to his patient. He knows the extent to which the sick man needs drugs to accelerate the healing power of his body. He knows when a patient should be rushed to bed to rest, and when it is better for him to be on his feet. How the patient can help the healing process. A prominent Californian physician told me there are processes of healing which work at all times to keep the body in a relatively healthful condition. Every physician knows that no matter what he contributes toward helping a patient, he is aided by this healing process of nature. This process works best when a patient is of a cheerful frame of mind and believes in his recuperative powers. Of course, it is important for anyone who has any serious symptoms to see his doctor, who may be able to suggest steps to take supplement the healing processes already fighting on the patient's side. But don't ignore the power of believing in your own good health. Fight fear thoughts with faith thoughts. Perhaps your radio or TV set blares at you. 1 person out of 5 will die of cancer. You can afford to shrug your shoulders. I shall do everything I can to avoid being that one, you say to yourself. I shall have regular physical examinations. If the slightest sign of cancer ever shows up, I shall allow my doctor to decide on the proper method of treatment. When such treatment is instituted in early stages, a cure is very likely. Your newspaper tells you 1 person out of 10 will spend some time in a mental hospital. You can tell yourself, I shall guard my mental health as carefully as I do my physical health, but if I ever become ill, I know that I shall recover. Mental illness is as curable today and no more disgraceful than many physical illnesses. You can choose the thoughts you think. Turn off your TV set. Forget your daily newspaper with its fear message. Faith is stronger than fear. Substitute a faith thought for every fear thought you see or hear. Now, this faith of yours must be applied to many things, but first of all, it must start with yourself. This is not putting yourself above God. God is within you as well as outside you. Whatever is good in you comes from the source of all goodness. Whatever healing power is within you stems from the great physician who made us all. However, even if you fail to acknowledge him, you can't help acknowledging the healing power of nature. We have testimony on this from almost all the great physicians, beginning with Hippocrates, who was born in Greece in the 5th century before Christ. We have further testimony from the famous Rabbi Louis Binstock, who says in The Power of Faith, a man must have faith in the body's normalcy. Every man must begin with the premise that his body is endowed with the same quality and durability and capacity enjoyed by the human body through the ages. One should have faith in the body's adaptability. Man not only survives, but constantly strengthens his position on earth. Faith can change hysteria into health, just as fear can change health into hysteria. The fear that changed health into hysteria. A recent AP dispatch from Darwin, Australia, told of a 19-year-old Aborigine, Charlie Leah Wulumu, who couldn't swallow and could breathe only in an iron lung. He said he was dying because of a tribal death-singing ceremony. The woman of the tribe had taken a spear and woomera, a throwing stick, and hidden them in a hollow ceremonial log. Then they had performed the death-singing ceremony. As soon as Charlie found the missing weapons, he realized that he had been cursed and fell ill. The black magic had begun its work. Later, another Aborigine pointed to Charlie's club high in a tree, a sign to signify the success of the death song. When Charlie learned that the cursers were already celebrating their victory, he grew worse and had to be flown to Darwin Hospital. The doctors couldn't find anything organically wrong with him, but he wasn't able to eat or breathe except when he was placed in an iron lung. Finally, he was able to remain outside the iron lung for an hour. During that time, he told his doctor, "Please save me. White man's magic is stronger than black magic, so please use yours on me." The belief that he could be saved by the white man's magic was strong enough to undo the mischief wrought by the cursers. Gradually, Charlie began to improve. At first, he could spend only 30 minutes out of each hour outside the iron lung. Then one day he was able to eat, drink, and breathe without artificial aid. "White man's magic strongest," he said triumphantly. Faith had triumphed over fear. Fear is a negative kind of faith, an unreasoning faith in the powers of darkness. The doctor who changed hysteria to health. We may be inclined to believe that only an ignorant Aborigine would allow fear to injure his health. Actually, all of us can imperil our health through fear. Johnny, a Chicago publicity man, was distressed by severe pains. He was even more distressed when a very thoughtless physician told him that his symptoms were those of TB. The second doctor whom he went was a more cheerful and thoroughful soul. "TB," he said, "my foot. Frankly, I don't know the cause of your pain. However, you do publicity work, which normally entails tensions and emotional upsets. An emotional upset may very well be the cause of your difficulties." He suggested that Johnny take a series of x-rays. They proved that the only thing wrong with Johnny was an irritable colon. The moment he discovered that he had no serious organic illness, he acquired all the faith he needed in the normalcy of his body. Within a month, he was like new man. Of course, not everyone gets well so quickly. Our physical symptoms sometimes help us get what our subconscious mind wants. A man whose marriage is going badly and who is afraid of losing his wife may develop a set of symptoms so that his wife will feel she has no right to leave him. It would take psychotherapy as well as medicine to cure him, because in his heart, such a man doesn't want to be cured. He's afraid that if he loses his symptoms, he will also lose his wife. Don't be a hypochondriac. Of course, we are all familiar with hypochondriacs who imagine they have every illness ever written about in medical literature. Very often these men are actually Samsons in strength, but they coddle themselves because they believe they are frail. They are so afraid of dying that they never have a chance to enjoy living. How can you and I enjoy good health when we have it? By knowing that we have it. There are 2 books on health that I believe should be on everyone's bookshelves. Dr. John H. Glindler's How to Live 365 Days a Year and Dr. Walter Cannon's Wisdom of the Body. Dr. Schindler shows us how to live in a world full of emotional stress. Dr. Cannon sets forth, better than any other writer I know, the reasons we are all far healthier than we think. Although our bodies are made of unstable material, he says, this unstable stuff has learned the trick of maintaining stability. From the book, The Wisdom of Body, page 23. The 5 reasons why we are healthier than we think. Actually, there are 5 reasons why each of us is healthier than he imagines himself to be, even in his most optimistic moments. Each of these reasons is dealt with at greater length and in detail in Dr. Cannon's book. They are nature's generosity, the constancy of our body temperatures, the natural defenses of our bodies, adequate storage facilities within our bodies, and the safeguarding of our circulating fluids. 1. Nature's generosity. Dr. Cannon calls nature's generosity the margin of safety in bodily structures and functions. On December 15, 1906, Dr. Samuel J. Meltzer, the eminent New York City physician, delivered a lecture before the Harvey Society. In this lecture, he discussed this margin of safety and concluded that our bodies are organized on a very generous plan. God or nature endowed all of us not just with what we need to make our bodies function well, but with an overabundance of almost everything. We might compare the construction of the body to the building of a fine house. The good builder would plan the building so that it would withstand almost every stress that could be imagined. Would the master architect of the world plan our bodies less wisely? Would the giver of all life be niggardly in handing out the vitality that makes life possible? Would he give us just barely enough to get on by? Of course not. It is a noteworthy fact in the construction of the body that many of its organs are paired, says Dr. Cannon, page 234. Are both of the paired organs needed for the continued existence and efficiency of the organism? They are not. One of the 2 kidneys may be removed. Indeed, 2/3 of each kidney may be taken without serious disturbance of kidney function. Even where our organs aren't paired, nature arranges remarkably safety factors, as Dr. Cannon points out. Though we have only one heart, that heart is furnished with a tremendous capacity for meeting extra demands. He adds that at any moment it is ready to contract twice as fast, put forth twice the amount of blood per beat, and against any arterial pressure which may be increased 30 or 40%, in page 233. In recent times, the whole world was given a stirring example of the heart's power to recuperate when President Eisenhower recovered after a heart attack that frightened the entire world. The heart muscle can be rebuilt. As a reaction to President Eisenhower's heart attack, the stock market plummeted. Politicians panicked. But Colonel Thomas W. Mattingly, a great heart specialist, told a meeting of the Los Angeles County Heart Association that he didn't expect any serious complications or trouble. He said that coronary thrombosis requires a period of complete rest so that the heart muscle can be rebuilt. Sometimes, he added, there can be complete activity after heart attacks of this sort. I know a landscape gardener who, after no less than 3 such attacks, is now back on his job. 2. The constancy of body temperature. Every human being comes equipped with a built-in thermostat to regulate the heat of his own body. As Dr. Cannon says, the constancy is so reliable that the thermometer maker can stamp 98.6 degrees on the Fahrenheit scale with assurance that it will mark closely the mean temperature of the healthy person everywhere. Page 177. Normally, he says, our temperatures may vary from about 97.3 to 99.1 degrees. Where could you buy a commercial thermostat that would work so perfectly year in and year out, better than the best forced heat or air conditioning system? Our personal thermostat works so perfectly that whenever it goes out of whack, we know it's time to call the doctor. 3. Natural defenses of our bodies. The body is a fortress, better protected against invading enemies than any medieval castle. As Dr. Cannon points out, if a foreign body enters one of the nostrils, it produces a tickling sensation followed by a sneeze. In the course of the body's reactions to the irritating object, it is usually thrust out. Even if it slips past the defenses in the nose, it will find itself barred from passage into the body by an almost insuperable barrier, the larynx. So it is with almost any invading agent that threatens to irritate or harm the body. An irritating substance in the mouth is apt to be diluted quickly by an outpouring of saliva. Local reactions save the body from blood poisoning. The familiar pimple or boil is seen by Dr. Cannon as a method by which our bodies meet local attacks. He points out that the local reaction saves the body as a whole from dangerous living agents. If bacteria produce a dangerous toxin or poison, our bodies respond by producing a protective antitoxin to fight it. Not only that, but our bodies know just how to handle the invaders. Wouldn't you consider a military commander extremely competent if he devised a plan for getting the enemy grouped into clumps or masses so that they would make easy targets for our armies? Our bodies produce an antibody which forces the dangerous bacteria to clump together. Thus, our armies of white blood corpuscles can produce wholesale destruction instead of searching the invaders out one by one. We don't have to draft the white blood cells. Without conscious effort on our part, they come to our aid. Everyday miracles of healing. From time to time, we hear a great deal about the miracles wrought by faith in curing illness. Why are we so awed by the occasional miracles at far-off shrines, when every day in our humble lives, our bodies are ready to achieve miracles in our behalf? Positive thinking will help nature. Many a physician has been blessed by his patients because he encouraged them to believe that they would recover. And 999 times out of 1,000, the definite belief that they would get well, aided by some simple pills, which may possibly have not done a thing to their body's chemistry, worked the miracle. Not by itself, of course. It isn't merely the power of positive thinking that causes you to recover from most illnesses. Give nature her chance, and she'll usually make you well. We have every right to think with awe about the miracle of our bodies, and no right ever to be ashamed of them. For they are fearfully and wonderfully made, as David proclaimed in Psalm 139. 4. Adequate storage facilities. How can the body always count on what it needs when it needs it? Well, explains Dr. Cannon, the body has arrangements for storage, both temporary for immediate accommodation and use, and reserved for later and lasting service. The healthy body seems to know exactly how much glucose and other materials we need, and whenever a critical point is reached, it releases stored materials to meet the needs of the circulating blood. Pages 290 and 291. 5. The safeguarding of circulating fluids. Our ability to move about freely in all climates and to survive disturbing conditions both inside and outside our bodies is dependent on the constancy of the blood and other circulating fluids. Page 59. Our bodies have automatic adjustments to all kinds of peril, including the sudden loss of blood. Except for abnormal bleeders, who are rare, the blood clots faster as it continues to escape from the body. The surface blood vessels are constricted. In this way, the flow of blood is reduced where loss of blood is most apt to occur, and a continued supply is sent to the most essential and sensitive organs, the brain and the heart, says Dr. Cannon. Because of the wisdom of the body, we are all millionaires in physical health. Naturally, we'd like to be billionaires. That isn't really so unreasonable a desire, because we know how good the world seems when we are feeling tip-top. What shall we do to help nature help us stay in a glorious state of health? Here are some rules most doctors will endorse. 1. Visit your doctor once or twice a year. It's a good idea to have a complete physical checkup at least once a year. Most physicians say that it is better to go 2 or 3 times to the same medical man than 1 time apiece to 3 different doctors. Each time you make an initial visit to a physician, he has to familiarize himself with your complete medical history. The doctor, who already knows your physical and emotional makeup, is usually better equipped to advise and help you than a stranger. 2. Avoid watching for a knock in your motor. This is an excellent rule, laid down by Dr. John A. Schindler, How to Live 365 Days a Year, pages 100 through 104. Among the world's most miserable people, he writes, are those who cannot get over the idea that they have something terribly and intrinsically wrong somewhere, something very rotten in the state of their constitutions. They are forever miserable, listening for a possible knock in their motors, a grinding in their differentials. An interesting psychological fact, adds Dr. Schindler, is that if any of us stop and ask ourselves, where do I hurt? We can, by self-examination, always find some place where we do hurt. If we concentrate on a slight pain, we can readily turn it into a grade A first-class pain. Remedy for the symptom seekers. The remedy is very simple. Don't take these minor knocks in the motor too seriously. I remember when I myself joined at one of the voluntary health plans, one of their MDs told me very gravely that I had a fibroid tumor. Immediately I started to worry about it. Then my subconscious came to my aid with a memory I had temporarily forgotten. Why, months ago, my subconscious reminded me, your gynecologist mentioned this fibroid tumor, explaining that it was nothing to worry about. She said that such tumors are always benign and usually shrink when the menopause comes along. So I grinned and forgot it. But the incident proves that doctors themselves can sometimes cause us to take little knocks in our motors too seriously, just by using words we don't understand. 3. When you honestly think there's something wrong, go to the doctor who gave you your original checkup. Ask him to check on whatever it was that is worrying you. Okay, so we worry too much about cancer, but if we get one of those 7 deadly symptoms they're always talking about, why not let a doctor look us over? It's much better than killing ourselves with worry or pretending we're not worried. One of my friends was very upset when she acquired a swelling where no swelling should be. Cancer, she thought. She saw her doctor immediately. After examining her, he said, just hemorrhoids, which are never malignant, and a very common garden variety of them too. Sit in a warm bath every night for 15 minutes. The swelling should disappear in 2 weeks. She walked out of his office singing. Never in her life had she been so grateful for having a common garden variety of anything. Worry can be worse than illness. Some men and women seem to prefer to postpone such visits to their doctors. I know a woman who worried herself sick for fear she'd get TB because a member of her family once did. I begged her to take a chest x-ray to reassure herself. They don't cost much, I said. I wouldn't have an x-ray made if they paid me $1,000, she said vehemently. So she continued to worry and fret. Then one day, she applied for a life insurance policy. To her horror, the insurance company doctor took a chest x-ray. When she found out he was going to take one, she almost ran out of his office. But common sense prevailed. What did the x-ray show? A completely normal pair of lungs, with not the slightest touch of TB. 4. Get yourself a hobby. Physical and outdoor hobbies are particularly good. Swimming and hiking are safe sports for most of us. A suggestion for today. In fact, a good hike is usually so tonic that I would suggest that as soon as you finish this chapter, you stretch your legs and walk at least 10 blocks in any direction. Garden if you can. As for other outdoor hobbies, fishing, ice skating, painting outdoors, and golfing are all good. But may I particularly recommend gardening to anyone who has a few feet of space he can call his own? My husband and I lived in the San Fernando Valley in California. Instead of hiring a gardener, he mows the lawn and I fight the weeds, handpicking most of them. We also get a tremendous kick out of our bouts with the rather heavy soil, which is kind to the roses, perennials, and trees, but not so kind to our annuals. The gardening my husband and I do not only improves the quality of our annuals, but also improves the quality of my husband and myself. It gives us a nice change from his technical TV work and my reading, writing, and housekeeping. 5. Keep your emotions pleasant. It's generally agreed by doctors that at least 50% of our illnesses are caused by unhappy emotions. Consequently, there's a good chance that by changing your emotions, you can improve your physical health. Even if you don't succeed in getting completely well, a pleasant attitude towards life makes its worst burdens bearable. The moment an unpleasant thought tries to intrude into your mind, banish it. Think instead of how you felt when your boss gave you that raise in pay, or when you caught your first marlin, or kissed your first sweetheart. Think also of exciting future plans. How are you going to spend your next free weekend? What is your idea of stimulating winter vacation, a thrilling summer holiday? In addition to consciously thinking of pleasant things, you might like to try a method suggested by William James, the great psychologist. William James claimed that we're mistaken when we imagine that feeling and bodily expression follow thinking. Most of us used to believe that we smiled because we were happy. Not so, said Professor James. We're happy because we smile. We saw no reason why we should wait until something wonderful happened before we smiled. No, the way to be happy, according to Professor James, is to turn the corners of our mouths upward, leap into the air with joy, and in every possible way indicate bodily that we are happy. If we do this often enough, happy emotions will come. He promised. 6. Be an optimist, not a pessimist. I looked up the word pessimism in the American College Dictionary. This is the way it was defined. 1. Disposition to take the gloomiest possible view. 2. The doctrine that the existing world is the worst of all possible worlds, or that all things naturally tend to evil. 3. The belief that the evil and pain in the world is not compensated for by the good and happiness. Honestly, would you want to be a pessimist and hold that kind of view of the world? Perish the thought. The Epistle of Paul probably gives the world one of the greatest formulas we have ever had for changing ourselves into optimists. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. 7. Find or accept a philosophy or religion that includes the concept of a God of love. It may seem strange in a chapter on health to stress the importance of love of God, but it isn't really strange. Dr. Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst, once said that every one of his patients past 35 who had fallen ill had done so primarily because he had lost his religious outlook on life. What's more, Dr. Jung added, not one of them recovered until he first recovered his religious faith. A sick soul causes a sick body. This was a psychoanalyst talking, not a preacher. He believed that body, mind, and soul are so closely intertwined that when the soul is sick, the body has to be sick along with it. Smiley Blanton MD, obviously had a similar idea in mind when he wrote Love or Perish. In this best-selling book, he wrote, "Each act we perform from motives of love pours strength and health into the stream of life. Hate causes us to perish, sometimes in a series of little deaths, sometimes at once. If we would preserve life in its fullest sense, we must choose the course of love. All the great modern religions preach that God is love, and that human love is the next thing to divine love. Loving other human beings is not only great religion, it's also good therapy for those who view their health with a jaundiced eye. Hatred, a sense of inadequacy, and resentment all may cause definite illnesses, for instance, ulcers. A life without love is rotten at the core, and is apt to bring the rottenness of ill health with it. We don't as yet know all the causes of disease, but we do know that many illnesses are partly caused by warped emotions. When love isn't at the center of one's life, but hatred, resentment, and envy fester instead, all sorts of illnesses easily follow. So love thy neighbor as thyself, and grow healthier every day, not only in body, but also in spirit. Points to remember in Chapter 5. You are healthier than you think for 5 reasons. 1. Nature's generosity. Your body carries spare parts. 2. The constancy of body temperature. 3. The natural defenses of your body. 4. Your body's perfectly adequate storage facilities. 5. The safeguarding of your body's circulating fluids. How to use your 3 keys for better health. Key 1. Think. I have been given a body capable of withstanding much more stress than it is apt to be subjected to. To all men and women, God has given bodies in which there are an enormous number of spare parts. If I were to lose one kidney, the other one easily take care of the job. That is the way the human body is built, providing a very generous margin of safety. What a blessing. Key 2. Write. You might copy this passage adapted from Dr. Louis Binstock's The Power of Faith, page 60. I have faith in my body's normalcy. My body is endowed with the same quality and durability and capacity enjoyed by the human body through the ages. I shall not worry about my physical health. Nature has provided me with an adequate number of danger signals, such as fever and pain. Key 3. Act. Once a year, make an appointment to visit your doctor for a thorough checkup. At other times, go to see him when a danger signal flashes or when you are worried about some symptom that may possibly be serious. As soon as you finish this sentence, put on your hiking shoes and walk at least 10 blocks in any direction. Part 2. You'll live longer than you think. We all remember the famous poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay that begins, "My candle burns at both ends. I will not last the night." Most of us believe that this is exactly what young people are doing today, burning the candle at both ends and thus shortening their lifespan. Paradoxically, the truth is that today we are burning a rather extraordinary type of candle. Apparently, this is the magic type for which man has been searching for centuries. You burn it, and somehow the wax grows longer. In spite of all the strains of modern living, we have been given a life expectancy greater than any of our ancestors had. Each year, you consume only about half a year. The result, as D.H. Killefer points out in 2 ears of corn, 2 blades of grass, is that each year we consume only about half a year of our lives. Each year for the past 9 years, our diligent scientific teams have given each of us an added 0.45 year of life. And there is our paradox, that if we measure our lives by our expectancies, then we use each year only part of the time shown by the calendar. Thus, in spite of what we think of as our frantic modern speed, we are not burning the candle at both ends as Americans are supposed to do. The fact seems to point in exactly the opposite direction. The long-lived patriarchs didn't live so long. Now, this may be very confusing to those who have been thinking, what about the days of the long-lived patriarchs of the Bible? Didn't they live longer than we do? The answer is no. Time was reckoned in a completely different way in biblical times. Time in some earlier cultures was figured in lunar years, and Methuselah, vaunted 969 years, may very well have amounted to the 70 almost anyone who takes reasonable care of themselves can achieve today. In fact, Clarence William Lee, MD, tells us in the witty and worthwhile book, Outwitting Your Years, I cannot forget the Old Testament calculation of Methuselah's age, according to our modern way of counting time, about 900 years off the beam. So we do not stand in great awe of the incredible figures about the ages to which biblical patriarchs lived. Many of them didn't live any longer than the average man can hope to live today. How long is that? Latest figures by the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company indicate an average expectancy of 66.3 years for white males in the United States. For white females, it's 72 years. This is the average length of life for these two groups, certainly not length of life to which a man may aspire if he has enjoyed a high standard of living. Besides, each year additional time is added to our life expectancy. Scientific progress may mean more birthday candles for you in years to come. Good news for those over 50. As Dr. Lee points out, those over 50 will most likely live to be over 70. Figures showing the average life expectancy include, he points out, the sick, the impoverished, and the underprivileged. It is very improbable that you belong to one of those groups. Consequently, your life expectancy is probably higher than the figures show. You can look forward to a ripe old age. Even under present methods of figuring life expectancy, if you are 50 years old, you can reasonably count on 21.37 years of additional life. If you are 60 years old, you may look forward to 14.5 additional years. If you are 70, you may look forward to 9 more years. If you are 80, the good Lord will probably bless you with an additional 5. The older you grow, the more likely it is that you will live to a ripe old age. Every year brings medical triumphs against the diseases that formerly wiped out large portions of the population. At one time, 20 years was an old age. What makes these figures all the more remarkable is the fact that human beings couldn't always count on an average expectancy half as great as we enjoy today. In the 15th century, Dr. Lieb tells us, a newborn baby was expected to live only about 20 years, and for centuries after that, average life expectancy figures moved ahead at a snail-like pace. Lord Byron, the poet, died at 36. He felt old, and he was old. In the poetry he wrote the year of his death, he wrote about himself as an old man. When he died in 1824, dying at 36 was not considered dying at a pathetically youthful age. Lord Byron had lived to just about the average expectancy of a young man of that era. Just think of it. In less than 150 years, the age of 36 has changed from veritable old age to pleasant youth. Today we feel that a man of 36 is just getting started in life. If he becomes a success before 40, we think admiringly of him as a very youthful success. Life has been stretched 3 ways. These higher figures for life expectancy are a result of 3 factors. 1. We are more apt to live through the perils of childhood. 2. We have learned to sail serenely through middle age. 3. People don't get old and senile nearly as soon. On top of all that, our actual days on earth are likely to be not only longer, but also much more comfortable. When you grow old, you'll have plenty of company. No longer is the old man of 60 a miserable, lonely figure longing for the days of his youth. Just as likely as not, he's active in many ways, and perhaps he uses the wisdom he has gained over the years to win the things in life for himself that he didn't have time for when he was younger. We have so many oldsters today that they're wonderful company for each other. We no longer lift an eyebrow when a woman of 70 marries a man of 85. Why, our modern grandmothers can even outrival Ninon de l'Enclos, who kept a lover waiting, it said, at the age of 90. Why geriatrics is important. The art of living longer and longer has resulted in so many oldsters in the population that much more attention is being paid to geriatrics, the branch of medicine that teaches old people how they can add more life to their years while they add more years to their lives. At the first Cavalcade of Health and Medical Progress sponsored by Los Angeles County Medical Association, Dr. George W. Anley Sr., a practicing physician and nationally known authority on geriatrics, said, "Geriatrics is not, as the advertisements say, a new science. Rather, it's an old art." He believes that family physicians have always tried to help oldsters feel better as they got older, and he believes that no one is better equipped than the family physician to help older people get the most out of their lives. The best geriatrician, he says, is a good family doctor. Everyone agrees that it would be no fun to live to be 100 or even older if one couldn't enjoy one's later years. How to add life to your years. The doctors have cocked a wily eye at our aging population and come up with some very helpful ideas. Let's take a look at some of these ideas which may help you add vigor and happiness to your old age. 1. Don't think your love life has to be over. Don't stay single if you can't find the right person to marry. Marry! If you are widowed or a grass widower, consider very seriously getting married again. Don't let fear that you are getting older keep you from enjoying the comforts of married life. Don't let the disparaging remarks of relatives or friends who think the aged have no right to love stop you. Never mind the wisecracks about there's no fool like an old fool. All the while, married people live longer. Also, if they're happily married, they get a lot more out of life. Dr. Lieb was an exceptionally fine chapter, Sex After 60 in Outwitting Your Years, in which he deals sensibly and wisely with the boogaboo almost every man fears, loss of potency in the later years of life. He says that it is possible to make the honeymoon ecstasy last through middle life and into old age, not necessarily in the same form or degree, but in a form and degree suited to changing moods and conditions. Page 35. Love can be beautiful for older people too. He tells us that among his older patients, there are many gray-haired men and women who are beautifully adjusted to each other. Many of them continue to enjoy the sex act to an almost unbelievable age, he informs us. He concludes that even men and women over 50 who haven't achieved emotional stability through fulfilled love in the past can still do so if they are normally healthy. 2. Seek new friends. Friends are among the greatest assets any of us can acquire. In the long run, they will add more to our happiness than exquisite furniture, expensive cars, or any other material possessions. Keep your friendships in good repair. Now, no one has thousands of friends, since no one has time enough to be a good friend to thousands. But the wise person is never content to let his friendships languish. He keeps them in good repair by showing an interest in his friends, congratulating them on their triumphs, sympathizing with them in their troubles. The mathematics of friendship is important. As we grow older, some dearly cherished friends will go. It will not help us or them to brood about their loss. The wise way to handle the situation is to follow Dr. John A. Schindler's suggestion in How to Live 365 Days a Year. Whenever an old friend departs, seek a new one. From page 180. We should never allow life to subtract more friends from our list than we add it by our own efforts. Always keep making new friends by showing a lively interest in the other fellow's interest. In his lecture at the first Cavalcade of Health and Medical Progress, Dr. George W. Anley Sr. suggested that each year the older person should deliberately try hard to make the acquaintanceship of one young person. As we grow older, we sometimes avoid exerting the effort of going out and meeting new acquaintances. But if we want to remain young in spirit, we must welcome every opportunity to meet someone new. Not only suggests Dr. Anley should an older person cultivate the acquaintance of a young person each year, he should also make an effort to keep that youngster's friendship. Don't be too critical. We all know that our arteries are apt to harden as we get older. Medicine may find a way to control this, but we, and we alone, can control the flexibility of our minds. Why should we let our minds harden into rigorous, intolerant patterns? Recently, a charming elder woman whom I'd never met before was seated opposite me in a tea room. We began to chat. I couldn't help liking her. She was so natural. But I was dismayed when she began to criticize young people. All of a sudden, the wonderful charm disappeared. In the place of the beaming, happy face was an unhappy, fretful one. She frowned unhappily as she told me of the young lady living in the same house as she, but in a separate apartment. She had tried to befriend this young woman, but her modern attitudes toward life had disturbed the older woman badly. The girl had gone out with a man she had met only once. After taking her to a fine restaurant, he had made a suggestion that the young woman repeated to the older woman. My tea-room companion had been horrified and shocked. You must adapt yourself to today's customs. I ventured the opinion that such suggestions are often made by young men nowadays, and that after all a girl can always say no, as this girl evidently had. The old lady was still shocked. What was the world coming to, she said, when a girl would go out with a man who hadn't even met her parents? Actually, they were living in a distant town. Thank goodness, she said, shivering. I didn't know young men like that when I was a girl. No man would ever have dreamed of making such a suggestion to a decent woman. If he had the sort of thing in mind, he knew where he could go. But to take a girl to dinner and then proposition her, well. So she had told her young acquaintance off. She had told the girl she had no business going out with a man her parents had never met. And she certainly had no right to let a young man she'd known only a short time take her to dinner. The old lady added that one should know a man for about a year before agreeing to a date. I can imagine the bewilderment of the young girl at the old lady's tirade. Following the old lady's instructions in today's world, she would probably have to live and die a spinster. You can't keep living in the past. Time marches on, but obviously it hadn't marched on much for this old lady. She was still living in the 1890s, when life was so very different. If she had told the youngster how to turn down a proposition in such a way as to make the man like and respect her, all the more for it, she would have been much more helpful. But she had been so shocked by the young man's immoral ideas that she hadn't been able to make any practical suggestion. Try to put yourself in the place of the young person. In the long run, the young and the old will get along much better if the older folk try to establish empathy, a feeling of being in the shoes of the younger individuals and having to live life as it is being lived by youngsters today. I know some really modern grandmas who can teach their granddaughters a thing or two about how to land the man they want. But there are inevitably grandmas who know that no girl can live strictly according to the modes and mores of the early 1900s. Of course, the same thing is true of grandpa. If he is consulted by teenagers, he must try to think young, even though he has the wisdom of old age. 3. Keep busy, at least part of the time. Robert Browning had the right idea about old age. Old age hath yet its honor and its toil. Now that so many of us are living to be oldsters, perhaps business will abolish its ridiculous practice of giving preference to youngsters when hiring. Obviously, there are some jobs at which young men and women excel. However, there are other jobs that are handled more competently and dependably by older individuals. It just won't do when competent employees get to be 65 to shove them aside with an old age pension in one hand and a gold watch in the other and say you're no longer needed. Whether you work for some particular firm or not, you as an oldster should keep busy. All the happiest elderly men and women I know do keep busy much of the time. Some wise older men. As for the accomplishments of oldsters, history records some very astonishing ones. We know that Bernard Baruch in his 70s was advising presidents. When Senator Fulbright launched his investigation of the stock market, the aging Bernard Baruch made some of the younger, more pompous men who had testified previously seem like donkeys. He pointed out that the stock market doesn't cause inflation. It is the thermometer, he said, not the fever. Those 7 words made a number of professors who had been spouting stock market nonsense sound very silly. Among the wise old men of our time are Eugene G. Grace, chairman of the Bethlehem Steel, in his early 80s, Henry J. Kaiser, who in his late 70s reorganized his industrial empire and supervised the building of the Hawaiian Village, an ambitious construction in Hawaii, and Herbert Hoover, who at 81 outlined to the President and Congress a plan for streamlining our government. You too can achieve something worthwhile. Now, very few of us can expect to accomplish things on the scale practiced by Henry J. Kaiser or Eugene G. Grace. But why can't we achieve something worthwhile based on our own abilities? Dr. George W. Ainley Sr. advises, start a new hobby each year. Set some sort of avocation which you yourself will enjoy, which will produce pleasure for someone else, and whereby you can make some money. In one case, he knew about a woman bent with arthritis still managed to occupy part of her time with knitting. She did such fine work that she earned about $2.50 an hour for the proceeds of her skill. I myself remember entering a bus recently and seeing an elderly woman flushed with happiness enchant a whole busload of passengers by showing another woman the fine hand-crocheted dolls she had made. Within 15 minutes, practically every passenger on the bus had bought a tiny doll from her. She told us that her dolls had been sold at a somewhat higher price by one of the finest department stores in Los Angeles. 4. Don't overdo or over-exercise. Dr. George W. Ainley Sr. believes that it may be all right for older men and women to engage in moderate exercise if they have been doing it all their lives. However, he adds, I have yet to see an old animal of any sort that exercises. The fatists think that they know the human physiology, and they believe that a lot of exercising will improve the race and make all of us live longer. There is no evidence to prove this except in the minds of the physical culturists. I remember that the late King of England went hunting on his last day. It was a chilly day and he had tramped hard and come home tired, but happy. Then, after eating a heavy dinner, he went to bed early because of a natural fatigue after such a day. I read of this in the evening paper. That evening, I was lecturing on heart disease to a group of older people, and I called their attention to the article and stated specifically that it was dangerous for any older person to go through such activity and eat a large meal and then go to bed early. This frequently results in a coronary thrombosis, usually between 1 and 2 in the morning. It comes about as a result of the extreme drop in blood pressure and circulation after such a day. The king died of coronary thrombosis, which came on as I had predicted. If you are an older person, and especially if you are a man and you feel that you must work or exercise, don't go to bed early that night. Instead, watch television or read something relaxing so that your blood pressure will gradually drop to its normal sleeping level. How to prepare for old age while you're young. It's fine to accept old age when it comes, but as Dr. George W. Ainley Sr. says, you should begin to adjust your life now so that you won't be pulling uphill, but coasting down till you get to a nice, pleasant valley. There are 2 fundamental ways in which you can prepare for old age. One is financial, the other emotional. So here are 2 rules to help you prepare while you're still young for the years to come. 1. Try to provide financially for your old age. Buy some endowment insurance, an annuity policy, or a good grade growth stock. Buy only the stock of a company that has been in existence for at least 10 years. Buy stocks with the intention of keeping them as long-term investments. In the case of growth stocks, the interesting point is that no matter how small the dividends they pay today, if you hold them long enough, you will eventually get good dividends on your original investment. That's because the values behind good grade growth stocks increase in each bull market over what they've been in previous bull markets. If you consult your broker, he will undoubtedly advise you on the choice of a good growth stock. Be sure that the company you choose is one that plows back a good percentage of its earnings for research or expansion. Annuities can be a good investment. In the past, one had to choose between annuity policies, which provided a fixed amount of money in one's old age, and growth stocks, which would go upward in a general long-term trend, but fluctuate slightly in value with various changes in the market. During the time of this publication, however, there is a move by some insurance firms to solve the problems of individuals who try to provide for their old age, only to find their dismay that the $100 or $200 a month they thought would provide for them adequately just isn't enough under inflationary conditions. You may soon be able to purchase variable annuities which will pay more or less per year, depending on business prosperity. The annuities will yield a certain income based on stock yields, for the money paid for them will be partially invested in good grade stocks. Presumably the stocks will go up in price when there is inflation, so the annuitants will get more money in those years when their money buys less. Now, in the past, a number of authorities have noticed that annuitants generally live longer. This indicates how helpful it is to have some kind of financial security in one's later years. 2. Try to provide emotionally for old age. Develop emotional stability now. If you let yourself get upset over every trifle, think of the kind of person you will have to live with when you are 65, every day in every way. To paraphrase Kui, you are creating the man you'll have to spend the rest of your life with. If you allow him to be slothful, lazy, untidy, and untruthful, you're going to be living with a slothful, lazy, untidy, untruthful old man. Not a very cheerful picture, is it? Don't prepare to live with a crotchety person. How would you like to spend the rest of your life with a crotchety old man who complains about everything and everyone? Would you want to room with such a man? If you allow the young man you are today to be nasty and grouchy, life will repay you by confining you for the rest of your life with the nasty young man, grown nastier with the years of practice of grouchiness. If, on the other hand, you learn to laugh good-naturedly at trifles and to look at life sunny side up, the chances are you'll still be looking at that sunny side of life later on. Then you'll have a most desirable roommate. You see, the point is that you'll live longer with yourself than with anybody else. Old people, someone once said, are just like young people, only more so. Start getting emotionally ready now. Let's see if we can turn ourselves into the kind of older individuals with whom it will be fun to live. Probably the most important step in this process is to grab the only second of time you have, right now, and try to express joy and satisfaction with life. That's it. A cheerful expression, a big grin, the corners of the mouth turned up, and the heart will follow your expression of joy in short order. Seneca once said that every hour is an eternity. So why not grab the next bit of eternity you have, the very next hour, to grin at life? Compliment the next 5 people you meet. If it's a sunny day, express satisfaction with that. If it's raining, remember that the earth needs that rain so that flowers can grow taller and more beautiful, and the grains and fruits of the earth more luscious. You can choose between 2 ways of reacting to life. One is the negative, unhappy, griping way. The other, the courageous, calm, cheerful way. Have you chosen? Then let your body express the choice you've made. Get up from your seat and take a look in your mirror. Smile as you look. With a few gray hairs added, is this the man you want to live with in your 50s and 60s and 70s? Remember, you never know how long you'll live with anyone else. But one thing is sure, as long as you live, you'll be living with yourself. So learn how to live with yourself joyfully. How to use your 3 golden keys to enjoy your later years. Key 1, think. I can add years to my life and life to my years. Don't think your love life has to be over. Key 2, you might copy this quotation from a letter to Julia Ward Howe, written May 27, 1889 by Oliver Wendell Holmes. To be 70 years young is sometimes far more cheerful and hopeful than to be 40 years old. Key 3, action. For older people, 1. Keep old friendships in repair and seek new friends too. Try to win friendship of young folks. 2. Keep busy, at least part of the time. 3. Don't make a fetish of exercise. If you exercise, don't eat a heavy meal or go to bed immediately after exercising. 4. Don't drive yourself all the time. Learn to relax. For younger people, 1. Try to set aside money for annuities or endowment insurance or growth stocks to help provide for your old age. 2. Try to provide emotionally for old age by learning to stay calm and by reacting cheerfully to everyday events. Part 2. Chapter 7. You're brighter than you think. Has anyone ever told you that you were extremely dumb in some subject? If someone has, you are in illustrious company. The great Albert Einstein learned to talk so slowly and seemed so slow-minded as a child that his father feared he might be feeble-minded. Thomas Alva Edison's teacher claimed that he was addled and couldn't keep up with his classmates. Since then, historians have said of Tom Edison, his brain had the highest cash value in history. Well, you may ask, what in the world have the late Thomas Edison and the late Albert Einstein to do with me? Just because they were brighter than their elders first thought, how does that prove anything about me? Why you're brighter than you think. Our teachers and parents often make mistakes, but in addition, many intelligent men and women underestimate their own intelligence. There's a very good reason for this. Your mind has over 40 dimensions. According to Professor J.P. Guilford of the University of Southern California, about 40 mental dimensions or factors have so far been mapped out. Among them are originality, judgment, foresight, ability to visualize, to express ideas verbally, and to comprehend what is said. Dr. Guilford believes that in addition to the 40 dimensions of the mind that have been identified, others will be identified in the future. Why bright people often think they're not so bright. Now, any bright person is aware of the fact that he doesn't shine in all 40 or more mental factors. He finds some intellectual tasks difficult. For instance, I know an auto salesman who prepares brilliant sales presentations, but when he tries to figure out his commission, he gets confused. I know another man who is excellent at mathematics, but his mind goes completely blank if he's asked to say a few words about any subject. It's not just that he suffers from stage fright, he doesn't know how to communicate his ideas in words. A college graduate I know can't figure out where to put the furniture in any room without having her husband shove it around from spot to spot. She just can't visualize how a sofa would look in any particular section of the room till she sees it there. The bright person knows his limitations. Often he is so worried about the fact that there are 2 or 3 intellectual tasks he doesn't handle well that he forgets that there may be 37 or 38 mental dimensions in which he shines. Even the average man is brighter than he is usually given credit for being. A legend arose during the First World War and has been repeated over and over again for about 40 years. The legend asserts that the average man has the mental powers of a 12 or 13-year-old boy. This absurd myth was based on a group of experimental intelligence tests, the Army Alpha test given to draftees in World War I. Why the Army Alpha test proved very little. To a large extent, they tested theoretical knowledge, not that based on adult experience. Adults are superior to 12 and 13-year-old boys in many types of intelligence, but these old Army tests didn't test those particular powers. Actually, a 12-year-old boy isn't so dumb, just inexperienced. I should hate to pass an examination based on the kind of questions my 12-year-old nephew gets in school. What is a meridian? Why are banana trees planted near cocoa trees? If an automobile can go a mile in 1 1/5 minutes, how far can it go in an hour? Who was John Paul Jones' first mate? This is information he has recently learned in school. Try to test him on the problems facing a man of 30, and he'd score very low. For wisdom is the product of years of experience. No boy of 12 possesses it, just as new wine can't have the qualities of vintage wine. As Dr. J.P. Guilford has said, the intelligence has often been defined as the ability to think, but intelligence tests have not stressed thinking as much as they should. How to be classed as a genius. Some psychologists say that if an average person used his intelligence to the limit of his potentialities, he would be classed as a genius. You can't help being reminded of the story of the man who came to a great industrialist and offered to show his employees how to do their work better. "What's the use?" thundered the industrialist. "They're not doing as well now as they already know how to do." That is true of most of us. The late William James frequently asserted that we use only a small fraction, about a tenth, of our brain power. The case of the average boy who topped average accomplishments. To prove what can be done with an average mind, Professor Boris Sidis and Dr. Sarah Sidis trained their son, William, from the time he was a small baby. Dr. Sarah Sidis claims that in her son, she had nothing more to work with than can be found in any normal average boy. Before he was a year old, William spoke simple words. When he was 2 years old, he could read well. By the time he was 5, he could not only type, but he could also speak 4 languages besides English. At 8, he entered high school. At 11, he delivered a scholarly address to the Harvard faculty on the 4th dimension. Dr. Sarah Sidis has outlined her methods with her son in Formula for Genius, published by Kimball Foundation Press of St. Louis, Missouri. One of her most important methods was teaching subjects to William when he was drowsy and drifting off to sleep, or when he was already asleep. Not all psychologists agree that we can learn while we sleep. However, many experiments have shown that what we learn just before we go to sleep is remembered better than knowledge acquired earlier in the day. Some psychologists believe that this is because the unconscious mind is most apt to work on problems we give it just before we go to sleep. To make the most of our mental powers, we must learn to use both our conscious and unconscious mind to good advantage. You rarely tap the powers of the subconscious. We all have a vast storehouse of knowledge that we rarely use, concealed in our subconscious minds. If we could plumb the depths of the subconscious, men might be like gods. The few glimpses we have already had of the storehouse of treasures, they are both exciting and frightening. Our conscious minds often deceive us. We forget names, facts, and figures we were sure we knew. The perfection of our unconscious memory. In a hypnotic trance, our memories seem almost perfect. Under hypnosis, a skilled bricklayer was able to describe the exact shadings, appearance, and position of a brick he had put in place in a building 10 years previously, though on that day he had placed about 2,000 bricks, no 2 of them alike. Another time, a young man passed a shop window, glancing at it briefly out of the corner of his eye. Asked what he had seen, he laughed and said, "Why, nothing. I went by so hurriedly I paid no attention to its contents." But under hypnosis, he remembered dozens of objects in the window he had barely looked at. Some of us think of the unconscious as that part of our mind that is half asleep most of the time, but it observes and retains billions of impressions, facts, and quotations of which we are not consciously aware. The illiterate woman who quoted Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. In Principles of Psychology, William James tells us that in a certain Roman Catholic town in Germany, the villagers were frightened half out of their wits when an illiterate young woman, while ill, began to spout Latin, Greek, and Hebrew quotations. At first, villagers thought that devils had taken possession of this young woman's mind. Indignation ran high against her, till her doctor discovered that at the age of 9, she had lived in the home of a very learned Protestant pastor. It was his custom to walk around the house quoting passages from Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. The child, busy with her games, had paid no conscious attention to these quotations, but her unconscious mind absorbed them, and years later, she could quote them word for word in her delirium. To some of us, it may seem appalling that there is such a treasure of seemingly wasted knowledge in our unconscious minds. We may think, what's the use of learning new things only to have them drop into the limbo of the forgotten? What use is it to have knowledge that we can reach only in a hypnotic trance, fever, or through some other strange circumstance? Why it pays to keep learning new skills and facts. Actually, this is not so wasteful a process as it seems. Psychologists have discovered that once you learn something, You can later relearn it much more quickly than if you had never mastered it. Suppose as a child, you ice skated very well. You dropped the sport for many years. When you try to skate again, you fall on your derrière, but in an amazingly short time, you are skating well again. Or suppose that you once learned typing, then dropped it. In 2 years, you lose about a third of your typing ability. When you try to relearn typing, you naturally pick it up much more rapidly than you did originally. Or suppose you once learned a prose quotation. 5 years later, you can relearn the same quotation, saving about 43% of the time it would otherwise take you. Furthermore, you unconsciously have access to facts you no longer remember consciously. Faced with an important decision, you can sleep on it. To help you make your decision, the unconscious mind will use facts you don't even know you know. How to tap the power of the subconscious. The subconscious mind has such great powers that if we can learn to tap just a small fraction of them, our minds can leap where ordinarily they just limp. 1. Follow your interest. The first step to take, if you want to tap the powers of your subconscious, is to study the subject you are most eager to learn. Your subconscious tries to guide you to success and happiness by flashing the signal of interest in some particular subject or subjects. If you defy it, you do so at your peril. A young man who was fascinated by business enrolled in a law school course because his father wanted him to become a lawyer. He couldn't make the grade, but as soon as he switched to business administration, he did brilliantly. This was what his subconscious mind had wanted for him from the very beginning. 2. Examine your hunches. Henry Bergson, the great philosopher, believed that intuition is the only means for perceiving the heart of things. Into the deep currents of the subconscious mind have been poured billions of memories, thoughts, and ideas. Our subconscious minds have the ability of delving into our storage bin of memories and selecting from it just what the mind needs for its intuitions. In his studies at Duke University, Dr. J.B. Rhine has shown that some of us possess marked intuitive powers, while others have only limited intuition. Others tests by psychologists have proved that the most intuitive individuals are usually those who believe in the power of intuition. Those who scoff at intuition rarely show up in tests as being particularly intuitive. So don't ignore your hunches. Regard a hunch as a present handed to you by the subconscious mind. When to follow a hunch. I asked a very wise psychologist, the late Dr. William Moulton Marston, how you can tell when a hunch is trustworthy. Examine it carefully, he said. If it corresponds with a wish, be suspicious of it. The subconscious mind is so anxious to help us make our wishes come true that sometimes it gives us a hunch that corresponds in every detail with our wish. Suppose that you are eager to make a trip to Hawaii and you get a hunch that you'll get a wonderful job there. Distrust that hunch. It's too close to your wish. On the other hand, I know a man who was looking forward to his vacation in Florida. Suddenly, he got a hunch to postpone the trip for a week. Though he hated to do it, he changed his reservations. The plane on which he had canceled his reservation crashed, and everyone on it was killed. Was it just a coincidence? Or had the mysterious unconscious mind called the unknown guest by Neuralink saved his life? In either event, Dr. William Moulton Marston would have said he acted wisely in following a hunch that was contrary to his wishes. 3. Feed the subconscious mind with facts. Louis Pasteur once said, "Chance favors the trained mind." Good, reliable hunches also favor the trained mind. William G. Damroth, business consultant and the author of How to Win Success Before 40, explains why this is true. He compares the subconscious mind with Remington Rand's UNIVAC machine, which solves problems on the basis of information fed into it. He says, think of your subconscious mind as your own personal UNIVAC. It can only come up with the right answers if you supply it with enough of the right kind of information. How to prepare for flashes of intuition. Intuition is usually most reliable in the field in which we know most. You can prepare your own mind for flashes of intuition by learning as much as possible about one special subject. Then, if you are at all intuitive, you will be able to utilize your intuition just as Dr. Fleming did once when a mold flew into his laboratory. The final result was the discovery of penicillin. But no untrained mind could possibly have gotten the hunch in the first place, even if a dozen molds had flown in and changed a dozen culture patterns of bacteria. To prepare your own mind for the hunch that may someday make you famous and wealthy, absorb knowledge like a sponge in the field of your choice. Maybe you'll forget some of the knowledge, but your subconscious will store it all the way. Then someday, from some source you cannot even trace, will come the great hunch. Ideas that seem to come out of the very air are actually evolved by our own unconscious minds. What is the simplest method for tapping the subconscious mind? The simplest method is to get the basic facts about a problem and write them down methodically before you go to bed. Go to sleep with the hope that your subconscious mind will give you the correct answer. This method has worked with great scientists, mathematicians, authors, and just average everyday people. It will work for you. I shall have more to say about how to tap the subconscious in the chapter on creative thinking. Of course, we have to learn to use our conscious minds to good advantage too. Just as a muscle may degenerate through lack of use, so certain qualities of the mind deteriorate when they are never called into action. Let's start a program right now for using our minds so that they become bright instead of flabby. 6 ways to brighten your mind. 1. Learn to think with your mind, not with your emotions. Someone once said, most people don't think, they just rearrange their prejudices. God gives us all the power to think clearly. Why then do we sometimes fail to exercise our intelligence? Frequently, we let our emotions ruin our judgment. At times, we accept prejudices instilled in us by others. Nearly all of us have some prejudices, but we can usually lessen them if we try to discover whether there is a logical, factual basis for an opinion we cling to vigorously. For instance, here's an employer who won't hire women over 35 or men over 45. He believes that they are unstable, that they hop around from job to job like grasshoppers, that they aren't quite so bright as youngsters, and that they are absent from their jobs more often. If he were to check his idea with the Department of Labor, he'd find that he is wrong on every count. One way for him to lessen his prejudice is to ask himself, do I know enough older men and women to justify my drawing a conclusion on just that evidence? Then he could ask other employers who hire older individuals what their experience has been. He could write to the Department of Labor for its statistics. He should get facts, not just opinions. 2. Make all the routine phases of your life automatic. You have a bright, logical, healthy mind. What a pity to clutter it up every day with trivia. You set your alarm for 7 a.m., but can't decide whether to get up when the alarm rings or wait another 10 minutes. This is no problem, but merely a form of mental doodling. Why not have an automatic time for rising and follow it each morning? Should you take a shower first or shave first? Again, this should be decided once on the basis of common sense and efficiency. Then an automatic procedure should be followed. The night before an important appointment, decide exactly what clothes you're going to wear. Have them in perfect condition within easy reach when you dress for your appointment. While your hands are automatically taking care of minor details, you can devote your mind to creative thinking. Many men get brilliant inspirations while shaving. Usually, they're men who act automatically in handling the trivia of day's activities. For instance, there's Jim Terrell, manager of the Mutual Fund Department for Southern Division of the First California Company. He wakes up at 5:30 each morning and whizzes through the morning's routine almost automatically. Before he leaves for work, he spends an hour planning the day's activities and in creative thinking and meditation. Some of his best inspirations come to him while he is shaving. At one time, when he was a salesman for Sears Roebuck, he wanted to do something that would attract his boss's attention favorably. Just as he got in front of the shaving mirror, the bright idea came to him of sending a birthday letter to his boss, stating how happy he was that he had just completed a year's service for the firm. The letter he wrote attracted such favorable notice that within 6 months he was promoted to divisional manager in charge of building materials. 3. Don't underestimate your intelligence or overestimate your knowledge. Intelligence is the ability to learn, to think, and to solve new problems. It is not the sole possession of college graduates. Out of 4 men who have the ability to graduate from college, only 1 may get the opportunity. The other 3 owe it to themselves to keep as well informed as they can so that they will make as much use as possible of their fine minds. One thing everyone should know: where to go to find the facts he needs to make a decision. Learn to use your neighborhood library. If you don't know where to look for some vital fact, ask your librarian. Smart businessmen demand facts. You can never be sure your conclusions are right unless you start with facts. Most smart businessmen make their decisions mostly on the basis of facts. No matter how good a theory sounds, they won't accept it till it has been proven by extensive research. Alfred P. Sloan Jr., honorary chairman of the board of General Motors, has often said, "Get the facts." Facts are not sufficiently considered in making business decisions. Alfred N. Steele, chairman of the board of directors of Pepsi-Cola, told me, "My cardinal rule is, don't guess at anything. If the right kind of effort is made, it is usually possible to get the facts." 4. Improve your memory. Dr. Bruno First, director of the School of Memory and Concentration at Steinway Hall in New York, and author of The Practical Way to a Better Memory and Stop Forgetting, has helped thousands of people improve their memories. Now, of course, any kind of improvement in your memory is helpful, but one of the most important knacks we can acquire is remembering the names and faces of people we meet. Forgetting them may cause them to resent us. Dr. First, a thin, dark man with graying hair who has a serious face but smiles freely, told me, "There is something definitely discourteous about being unable to remember a man's name. It's important to him, obviously. By forgetting it, you're silently saying, 'I just didn't think you were important enough for me to make the effort to remember your name.'" To help men who have difficulty remembering names, Dr. First suggests the following rules. Get the name clearly. Sometimes the person who makes the introduction just mumbles the name. This is the time to say frankly, "I'm sorry, I didn't get your name," or to ask your new acquaintance how he spells or pronounces it. 2. Try to associate some meaning with the name. When you're introduced, try to connect the name with some fact. For instance, a person with a smooth, bland face may be introduced to you as Mr. Wrinkle. You think to yourself, well, there's no wrinkle in his face. 3. Repeat the name in your conversation. When you're introduced, don't just say, "How do you do?" Say, "How do you do, Mr. Wrinkle?" or "How do you do, Miss Jones?" Throughout the conversation, address him often. It's just as easy to say, "I think you're right, Mr. Wrinkle," as to nod your agreements. When you leave, say, "Goodbye, Mr. Wrinkle," or "Goodbye, Miss Jones." Before taking his course, some of Dr. First's students claim that they can remember names, but have difficulty matching them up with the right faces. His school overcomes this difficulty by teaching them how to associate the name with face and appearance. How to remember faces better. Dr. First suggests that you inspect each new face carefully for distinguishing features, and that you should notice the shape of the face and head. It will also help you to improve your memory for faces if you draw a new face several times mentally. Since most of us are visually minded, it will help considerably if when we get home we make a rough drawing of the new face and write underneath it the name we associate with it. If you met a new person today, why not, when you finish this chapter, draw a rough picture of him in your notebook. If you can't draw, you should still keep a memory notebook with the names of new acquaintances and perhaps a brief description of each one. 5. Try to apply what you learn. For instance, a housewife might learn that everyone should have at least one serving a day of dark green, leafy, or yellow vegetables. But the knowledge doesn't mean a thing unless she actually follows the rule. A man might learn all the theories about how to fix a TV set, but until he has actually worked on a number of sets and applied his theoretical knowledge, it has very little value. You might learn all the rules for French grammar, but unless you continue to read or speak French, your conscious mind would, within a few years, forget much of this knowledge. On the other hand, if you once took piano lessons and still play frequently, you have retained most of what you learned. Theoretical knowledge is quickly forgotten by the conscious mind if it is not applied. 6. Have a definite goal. Montaigne once said, "No wind serves the man who has no port of destination." We all learn faster and more easily when we have a definite goal or motive. For instance, Carol Chessman, fighting for survival on death row, has learned more law than many lawyers. Frequently, he has spent 18 hours a day studying law. Wouldn't you, if you knew that your life might depend on your legal knowledge? Few of us will have a motive with so great a driving force as this. But we can give ourselves goals that will make us eager to learn. Suppose you're working in the complaint department of a store and would eventually like to be supervisor of that department. You will ask yourself what trade journals and books you can read to qualify yourself for such a job. You will pay more attention to the reaction of customers, noticing which phrases bring a favorable response and which antagonize customers. You will learn how to write letters that turn complaining customers into friends of the store. Just as no automobile can run without a motor, no one can accomplish much without a driving force. The greater that driving force, the greater your enthusiasm will be. You are ruled by an inner God. Pasteur, the famous scientist, once called enthusiasm the inner God. A long-range goal, based on our real interest, generates enthusiasm in us. It is when we are motivated by enthusiasm that we are most capable of learning whatever we are eager to learn. All of us would like to earn more money, get a better job, or do better work in our current field. Select a definite goal. If you want to earn more money, you might aim at an income 10 to 20% higher than last year's income. Select the subject that interests you most and study it every day for half an hour at a time. If you do this faithfully, I promise you that by the end of a year, you'll be exceedingly well informed on that subject, perhaps even an authority. How to use your 3 golden keys to brighten your mind. Key 1. Think. There are over 40 dimensions to the mind. If I am weak in some of these, I surely shine in others. Key 2. Copy this quotation from William James. Compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake. We are making use of only a small part of our possible mental and physical resources. Key 3. Act. Map out a schedule for tomorrow's activities on which you have listed the little automatic details and the time at which you believe you can take care of them. For this one day, pay careful attention to these ordinarily automatic details of dressing and showering. See whether or not you can handle as efficiently as possible. Then make another schedule tomorrow if you can think of more efficient ways of handling automatic trivia. Set the pattern after that. Start to improve your memory for names. If you met a new person today, draw a rough picture of him in your notebook and write his name under it. If you're not particularly good at drawing, write a description of what he looks like and put his name at the top of that description. Part 2, Chapter 8. You're more creative than you think. The other day, my friend Ben Cozart of Ben Cozart and Associates a prominent Southern California publicity firm, was on the phone. "I'm making a pitch for a very important new account," he told me. "I have a lot of competition for it." "You'll get it," I said. "Knowing how conscientious you are, I can just visualize 12 pages of perfectly typed material, full of valuable suggestions on the different ways in which you will get desirable publicity for the firm." Ben Cozart laughed. "Actually, there are 30 pages of suggestions," he said. Need I add that he got the account? Ben has a quality William G. Damroth, author of How to Win Success Before 40, calls idea ability. It is the ability to think up new ideas that will help solve problems. The ability that will get you a raise or increased business. Idea ability is so important in the business world that in a group of men with equal intelligence, the highest salaries are usually earned by those with the most ideas. Now, the astonishing thing about this quality, which can raise the size of your paycheck, change you from a failure to a brilliant success, and double, triple, or quadruple your income, is that everyone has it. Every child is born with creative imagination. Walt Disney, who certainly should know, says that every child is born blessed with a vivid imagination. But just as a muscle grows flabby with disuse, so the bright imagination of a child pales in later years if he ceases to exercise it. Alex F. Osborne, president of the Creative Education Foundation of Buffalo, New York, and author of Applied Imagination, a university textbook on creative thinking, says, "Creative power is not limited to a few geniuses. The power is universal." Everyone has a gold mine between his ears. When ordinary mechanics were analyzed, it was discovered that 2/3 of them are above average in creative talent. Obviously, salesmen, advertising men, and other individuals who have to use creative imagination in their jobs improve their powers through constant effort. Mr. Osborne, one of the founders of Batten Barton, Durstein and Osborne, the famous advertising agency, owes his successful career to that fact that he has been dreaming up ideas all his life. At 21, a cub reporter on the Buffalo Times, he was laid off. The next day, armed with a few of his clippings, Alex Osborne went to call on a rival city editor. The editor looked over the clippings and said, "Your style is nothing to shout about, but I notice that in every article you've written, there's at least one good idea. A lot of our reporters write very professionally but never bother to think up a new idea, so I'll take a chance on you. A few good ideas can win a man a job." This gave Alex Osborne a new slant on the value of ideas. He made up his mind that he would never let a single day pass without thinking up at least one idea. Later, when he became an advertising man, thinking up ideas won him promotions, friendships, and a chance at real leadership. He became head of Batten, Barton, Durstein, and Osborne, which employed about 1,000 persons. He insists that many of them possessed more native talent than he did. Time and again he has said, "I owe whatever success I've had to my faith in the possibility of increasing creative power by applied effort." Mr. Osborne not only stepped up his own powers through effort, but also taught his employees how to do so. Today, as president of the Creative Education Foundation, he endeavors to instill in people all over the world the attitude that says, "I too have a creative power that will add strength to my knowledge, help me do a better job, and live a happier life." Today, several universities and business firms give courses in creative thinking because they believe that we can all learn how to increase our creativeness through a deliberate effort to do so. You don't have to have a college education to be creative. However, men with limited formal education are often more creative than those college graduates who aren't especially trained in using their imaginations. As one college professor said, "Ordinary men don't know as much as the quiz kids, but are often far more creative." So great is the creative power of average human beings that Ford Motor Company employees collected more than $1 million last year for 77,815 ideas they submitted under the company's employee suggestion plan. Big firms want employees' ideas. Today is open hunting season for ideas, says Robert P. Crawford in the Techniques of Creative Thinking. Over 5,000 American companies maintain suggestion systems for the consideration of ideas submitted by employees. There is even a National Association of Suggestion Systems with headquarters in Chicago. General Motors is securing about 30,000 usable ideas from its employees each year, and mind you, just about 1 out of every 4 ideas submitted is usable. No one can say that ordinary men and women cannot think up new ideas. He kept sending in ideas. One of the top cash awards in the General Motors suggestion plan was won recently by Lawrence A. Buzzell, Jr., a foreman in the trimming department of the Fisher Body plant in Van Nuys, California. Mr. Buzzell submitted 71 suggestions. He not only won $2,500 for a suggested technique for installing interior trim, but also a promotion from his previous position as an hourly worker on repairs to his present position as a salaried foreman. How to build up your own creative power. How are you personally going to build up your resources of creative power? Here are some ways that have been found helpful by creative thinkers throughout the centuries. 1. Associate with children in some of your spare time. If you have children of your own, play with them. Listen to their conversation. Children will give you a new way of looking at things because they take nothing for granted. Every problem they give you, from why is the sky blue to why can't pens have erasers, just like pencils, will give you practice in exercising your imagination. About 12 years ago, William Brockway of Bel Air, California, then a sound technician at MGM, got an idea from his 8-year-old daughter, Bonita. She had forgotten to turn out the light in her bedroom before coming into the kitchen. Her father noticed the light and told Bonita she'd have to go back and turn it off. The childish question that led to the big idea. "Oh, Dad," sighed the 8-year-old, "wouldn't it be wonderful if there was some way I could turn the light off without moving a step from where I'm standing?" Most men would have dismissed the question as a childish fancy, but Mr. Brockway didn't. Instead, he started working on it in his spare time. His first opportunity to develop touch plate, which made Bonita's dream come true, came with the Kaiser Fritz Burns post-war demonstration home. 3 master controls were installed to control lights inside and outside the house. There was also touch plate buttons in each room, which would be worked by a mere touch of the elbow or wrist. Mr. Brockway patented his invention and sold it to a firm in Los Angeles. Every month he receives $500 in royalties for his brainchild. His creative interest in electronics also led to his becoming founder and president of his own electronics company, Rumpel Inc. 2. Watch for deficiencies in everyday life that need remedying. The ability to see what needs to be done is the first step in finding solutions for a particular problem. Dr. J.P. Guilford, professor of psychology of the University of Southern California and director of 7 years of basic research in creative thinking for the Office of Naval Research, believes that the creative person is likely to be more sensitive than most to the existence of problems. Why not keep your eyes and mind systemically open for money-saving or time-saving improvement in ways of doing things? Noting deficiencies that need to be remedied won't in itself make you rich, but it is the first step in figuring out a way to overcome them. 3. Expose yourself to new sights and sounds. Travel to strange places in your own town. Try new restaurants. Travel to a new place on your vacation. We don't see too clearly what's close by. A famous speech by Russell Herman Conwell called Acres of Diamonds once pointed out that men may travel thousands of miles in search of diamonds only to find out, sometimes too late, that the wonderful jewels could be dug up much nearer home. It is perfectly true that ideas are found wherever you are, for they are within you. Nevertheless, our minds can grow stale, and we can fail to see what is around us. For many years, I have passed a place called Abbey Rents, specializing in renting all kinds of furniture. Yet it never occurred to me, though I am an article writer by profession, to query any magazine to find out whether it would be interested in an article about this firm. One day, picking up my copy of the Saturday Evening Post, I noticed that a writer more enterprising than I had thought of it and sold an article on the subject. No matter how many acres of diamonds there are around you in the shape of fruitful ideas, you'll probably have fresher thoughts if you go to a new place in town or on a vacation to a strange town. Prescription for creative thinking: a vacation every year. Robert H. Goldsmith, one of the most successful insurance salesmen in the United States, took a 2-month vacation last year. He takes a vacation of a month or longer every year. A vacation, he believes, is the best investment a creative salesman can make. During his vacation, he tries not to think of business, but when he comes back to his Beverly Hills home, he knows exactly what he wants to do and how he can accomplish it. So either take a vacation once a year or go on one-day vacations every week to new places where you can see things with a fresh perspective. Going to strange places not only stimulates the imagination, but also gives the subconscious mind a chance to work on problems while your conscious mind is concentrating on how many fish you can catch or how many elk you can shoot. 4. Always define and narrow your problem as much as you can. A problem well stated is half solved, Professor John Dewey once said, to which Alex Osborne adds, divide and conquer. Charles Kettering once explained how General Motors solves many of its problems. He compared a problem to a machine. You break a machine down piece by piece to find out what is wrong. When you examine each piece, you find it relatively simple to fix the whole machine. Similarly, if you break down a problem into many small specific component parts, it is easier to solve each small problem to arrive at the solution to the one big problem. In Your Creative Power, Alex Osborne gives this example of breaking down a problem into its components. Let's imagine ourselves to be the mousetrap maker to whom Emerson is alleged to have brought fame. Out of there in the woods, we might determine to make a better mousetrap, but we would be wise to narrow down the aim of ours before rolling up our sleeves. We could well ask ourselves a series of specific questions. How can I make it better looking? Cheaper? Easier to use? Safer for the housewife? Lighter in weight? If we happen to have a research staff, we might well assign one of these aims to each man or group. That would put us further ahead than if we said to all of them, "Gentlemen, I want the world to beat a path to my door. Make me a better mousetrap." Go to it. 5. Gather facts about your problem. Gathering the facts sometimes uncovers the solution. But Mr. Osborne warns that it is possible to gather too many facts too soon. Sometimes it's best, he says, to get a few basic facts, then start thinking up your own ideas. After you have thought about 50 ideas, you can go back to gather more facts to see how well your ideas stand up in the light of the facts. We want the mind to go off on strange new paths, but it won't if we smother it with too many facts about conventional ways of doing things. Alex Osborne discovered that when he did too much research too soon, his mind was lulled into adapting other people's ideas. His most brilliant, original ideas have come when he tried to think up unusual solutions of his own, with very little knowledge of how other people had handled similar problems. How to get the subconscious mind to do most of your creative work for you. From time immemorial, mankind has wished for an Aladdin's lamp, which would make wishes come true. The closest thing to this magic lamp is the subconscious mind. The genie of the subconscious mind will work for you if you follow a certain process. How can we trap the subconscious mind into doing a great deal of our creative work for us? Here are 8 tested ways. 1. Give yourself a motive. The subconscious mind works at its creative best when you have a purpose. A recent AP dispatch told of a young man who filled the First Methodist Church in Dallas, Texas one night. Kenneth W. Ritchell, a salesman, felt that not enough people were attending church. How could he persuade them to come? He decided to issue invitations wholesale in personal letters and through newspapers, radio, and television programs. They carried his message, Come fill the room with good fellowship. The church was packed. To him, getting people to the church was his motive. At all times, your subconscious mind will bring the kind of ideas that will help you achieve your goals. 2. Make a date with your subconscious. Prod it with definite orders as to what you want, but tell it what methods to use. Sometimes it pays to give the subconscious a deadline. You must keep prodding the little fellows with such orders such as, Genie, at 2 p.m. tomorrow, I want you to tell me just that I'm going to sell 3,000 crates of oranges. Of course, it will help the genie if you have collected on cards all the pertinent information about what Mr. Mac likes, dislikes, and hobbies. This will make it easier for the genie to figure out the best approach. Genie, at 7 p.m. tomorrow, I have to make a speech on the dynamics of modern industry. I haven't an idea of how to start. Please figure out a clever beginning for me. Genie, please help me land the advertising account with So's company. Genie, some good ideas, please. Be sure to hand them to me before 10 a.m. tomorrow. Will the genie always follow your orders? Usually they will. In fact, Alex Osborne says, it's great to put yourself on this kind of spot. By doing so, you intend your emotional power to generate ideas. 3. Always keep a pad and pencil at your bedside. You never can tell when the subconscious mind will suddenly come up with an idea. When it does, write it down. When Schubert got an idea from reading the Shakespeare Sibylline, he turned to his friend, a painter, and said, draw me 5 lines on a piece of paper. I've got an idea. And so was born Schubert's song, Hark, Hark the Lark. 4. Don't be critical of your ideas too soon. You have a problem that cannot be solved by cold logic. It needs the warm spark of imagination. But the moment your subconscious mind tries to throw out a spark, your conscious mind says, the idea's a lemon. Your boss would never go for it anyway. It won't work. In the early stages of the creative game, the conscious mind, sometimes known as the judge, must be told to shut up. Nothing will cause the genie to scamper away so much as being told by the conscious mind that their ideas are worthless. If improvements are needed, the genie are perfectly capable of improving upon their original suggestions, but these willing workers don't like to have cold water thrown on their inspirations the moment they whisper them to you. Also, don't present your newly hatched ideas to others for criticism before you've worked on all the details. The energy you need to solve problems shouldn't go into talking about them. 5. When stymied, stop for a while. Of course, most creative problems cannot be solved overnight. After you have had a great session with yourself, it's usually best to stop trying to think up any more ideas. This stage is called incubation. 7. Keep yourself motivated. Dr. Paul R. Christensen of the Psychology Department of the University of South California gives his students in creative thinking practice in a variety of methods of solving problems. He told me, we stress keeping yourself highly motivated. It is important to preserve interest in a problem over a long time. When you get to the point where you are stymied or blocked, do something else. Find rhythmic tasks to do. Rhythmic tasks often have a remarkable way of stirring up the creative mind. Knitting, horseback riding, and shuffling and dealing cards are all well described by Dorothea Brande in Becoming a Writer as rhythmic exercises that produce a light state of hypnosis. The thing to realize, she says, is that the unconscious must be trusted to bring you aid from a higher level than on which you ordinarily function. One novelist, she tells us, played endless games of solitaire when she came to a difficult spot in her novel. Another novelist spun stories in her mind as she knitted. Sometimes months, even years, lapsed between the time the problem first occurs to us and the time we happily hit upon the solution. The spring that served as a springboard for a toy. Richard T. James, inventor of Slinky, a toy with a sliding movement, noticed that a certain spring had an unusual movement. Months later, to amuse a sick boy, he used this type of spring to make up a toy. It made such a hit with the young invalid that Mr. James decided to put it on the market. Since that time, thousands of Slinkies have been sold all over the United States. the teenager who figured out a way to light a fire safely. From the time he was a child, James Landy wished he could figure out how to light a campfire safely on a windy or rainy day. By the time he had worked out a device that actually did it, the Kindle light, he was 19. However, he had never abandoned his search for a device that would work. Whenever he had time off from jobs at which he earned his livelihood, he would inquire at camping equipment stores whether any satisfactory fire lighting device had been placed on the market. When they told him that they knew of none, he was motivated to try still harder. The important point for you and me is this: whenever we have temporarily abandoned seeking an answer to a problem, the unconscious mind should have its orders. This is important to us. Don't give up the ship. Keep on working on this idea while I sleep and rest. 7. When the white heat of creation is gone, put your work aside for later evaluation. Just as a period of conscious thinking and gathering facts usually precedes a creative idea, so a period of conscious thinking should eventually follow it. This is the period of evaluation. You must either evaluate your idea yourself or get someone else to do it for you. Creativeness is wonderful, but it is only half the battle. The other half is evaluating your idea or hearing another's opinion of it. Sometimes an honest opinion may spark a new idea. Alex Lewitt had developed a special device for removing dust from battleship gun turrets for the Navy. The girl who inspired a creative business idea. One day, walking through the plant where the device was being used, he heard a girl working on the assembly line say wistfully, "What a fine vacuum cleaner this would make. If I had one like it at home, I'd be very happy. It makes so little noise and accomplishes so much." Out of that chance remark was born the Lewitt vacuum cleaner, an adaptation of the Navy device. However, those with creative ideas will often meet with negative reactions. Alex Osborne says, "Never mind if that happens to you. Don't let the fear of looking foolish deter you." While president of Harvard University, Dr. James Bryan Conant kept on his office wall a drawing of a turtle with this motto, "Behold the turtle. He makes progress only when his neck is out." Most of the world's truly great ideas were laughed at when first suggested. Just because one person or 100 say your idea is worthless doesn't necessarily mean they're right. If you think it's good, try it out on a small scale. Even if one idea, one story, or one invention is poor, that doesn't mean you're lacking in creative ability. We sometimes forget that our greatest geniuses, like Edison, often had 100 sour ideas for every good one they gave the world. They had a quality of persistence, which made them keep on trying to solve important problems, whenever the solution didn't come easily. You have to hang on, not only till you solve a problem, but also long enough to sell your solution to others, if you believe in it. Chapter 8 in a nutshell. 5 ways to stir up your imagination. 1. Associate with children. 2. Keep your ideas open for deficiencies that need remedying. 3. Expose yourself to new sights and sounds. 4. Always define and narrow your creative problem as much as you can. 5. Gather some basic facts that will shed light on your problem. 8 ways to get your subconscious mind to do some of your creative work. 1. Give yourself a motive. 2. Give yourself deadlines for specific ideas. 3. Always keep a pad and pencil handy. 4. As soon as you get an idea relating to a creative problem, write it down. 5. Don't be critical of your idea too soon. 6. When stymied, stop for a while and engage in some pleasant rhythmic task. 7. Keep yourself motivated. 8. After the white heat of creation is over, try to evaluate your ideas. How to use your 3 golden keys to help you think up ideas. Key 1. Think. I too have a creative power that will add strength to my knowledge, help me do a better job, and live a happier life. Key 2. Within the next 10 minutes, put down on a sheet of paper a problem you would like to solve. Then draw up a list of questions pertaining to that problem. Make a list of the basic facts you'll have to know before you can attack the problem. Make another list of the sources where you can find those facts. Key 3. Act. Tomorrow, at the latest, go to one or more of these sources you have listed and ask your question. Or drop a note to someone out of town if the best authority is out of town, asking one specific question. Or phone someone in town who might be able to give you the information. Or go to the library and look up the information. Then that night, before you retire, give orders to your unconscious mind. Supply me with as many solutions as possible by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. There is still more to come here from part 2, how you're better than you think you are. Hope you're enjoying this, and like I mentioned in the first video, that this is like getting that message in the bottle from the past. So we will get some points that seem a little bit antiquarian, which is more of a reflection of the times, the economy, the mindsets. But one thing that does not change is the upright man, the moral and the values. And if we could hold on to these simple basic truths that will allow us to continue to quest on to become better than what we are, then we will see through all that and kind of not even be bothered by it. So I always say, let's look for those golden nuggets. Meet me at the next video, as the author is going to talk about how you're as lucky as you think you are, how you can conquer the past, and that you can be more lovable than you think you can be. Please do hit the like button. Share this with your friends if you know that they could have a takeaway from this, and also subscribe to the channel so you'll get notified when I put up the next video.